when Richard Gere's corrupt cop and Andy Garcia's internal affairs investigator faced off on screen, their real-life animosity was just as explosive as their characters' psychological warfare. From actual punches thrown during filming to a drowned swimming pool ending that audiences never saw, this 1,990 neo-noir thriller hides a treasure trove of bizarre production secrets, career ironies, and unsettling connections that span decades. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about internal affairs. Fact 1. Real punches in the elevator scene. Behind the intense psychological thriller that audiences saw on screen, an equally volatile drama was unfolding between the two lead actors. Richard Gere and Andy Garcia reportedly did not get along during the production of Internal Affairs, and their mutual dislike allegedly spilled over into one of the film's most memorable confrontations. In the now infamous elevator scene, where Dennis Peck ambushes Raymond Avila and brutally beats him while taunting him about an alleged affair with his wife, some of the punches exchanged between the actors were allegedly real. According to multiple sources close to the production, the animosity between Gere and Garcia was so palpable that during scenes requiring physical contact, particularly the elevator confrontation, the actors didn't hold back. You can actually see the impact in the final cut, where Gere headbutts Garcia and delivers a series of blows that look genuinely painful. The scene's raw intensity wasn't just masterful acting, it was fueled by authentic tension between two men who genuinely disliked each other. This real-life hostility ironically served the film well, as the psychological warfare between the corrupt cop Dennis Peck and the determined internal affairs investigator Raymond Avila required exactly that kind of visceral, unfiltered aggression. Director Mike Figgis, whether by accident or design, captured lightning in a bottle by pairing two actors whose off-screen relationship mirrored their characters' mutual contempt. The elevator scene remains one of the film's most talked-about moments, with viewers often commenting on how authentic and brutal the violence feels compared to typical Hollywood fight choreography. What they were witnessing wasn't just acting, it was two professionals channeling their genuine dislike into a performance that would define the entire film's tone. Fact 2. Garcia boycotted the rap party. The bitter feud between Richard Gere and Andy Garcia didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. In fact, the relationship between the two stars had deteriorated so completely by the end of production that Garcia took the extraordinary step of refusing to attend the film's rap party, a traditional Hollywood celebration that marks the completion of filming. This decision sent a clear message to everyone involved in the production about just how deep the rift between the two actors had become. Rap parties are typically joyous occasions where cast and crew come together to celebrate their collaborative achievement, share stories from the set, and toast to the completion of months of hard work. For one of the film's two leads to skip this event entirely was both unusual and telling. Garcia's absence from the celebration spoke volumes about his experience working with Gere, suggesting that whatever happened between them during filming was significant enough that he couldn't bring himself to be in the same room with his co-star, even for a few hours of obligatory socializing. The professional consequences of this feud extended far beyond that one missed party. In the 3.5 decades since Internal Affairs was released, Gere and Garcia have never worked together again on any project, despite both maintaining active careers in Hollywood. This is particularly noteworthy given that both actors have worked repeatedly with other directors and co-stars from Internal Affairs, including director Mike Figgis. The fact that these two talented performers have never reconciled or collaborated again suggests that whatever transpired during those tense months of filming in 1990 left permanent scars on their professional relationship. Fact 3. Gere's favorite. Despite the feud, in one of the film's most ironic twists, Richard Gere has publicly stated that Internal Affairs is his favorite movie of his entire career, despite the bitter feud with his co-star that made the production so difficult. This revelation is particularly surprising given that Gere's career has spanned more than 4 decades and includes beloved romantic comedies like Pretty Woman, critically acclaimed dramas like Chicago, and blockbuster hits like An Officer and a Gentleman. Yet when asked to name his personal favorite among all his films, Gere consistently points to Internal Affairs, the movie where he and Andy Garcia could barely stand to be in the same room together. Gere has explained that what drew him to the role was the opportunity to play against type. As Dennis Peck, a charismatic but utterly corrupt police officer who manipulates everyone around him. For an actor primarily known for playing romantic leads and sympathetic characters, the chance to embody such a complex villain was both challenging and liberating. The role allowed Gere to showcase his range as a performer, diving deep into the psychology of a sociopath who hides his ruthlessness behind a charming smile. Dennis Peck remains one of the few genuinely villainous characters Gere has ever portrayed on screen, and the actor has spoken about how rewarding it was to explore that darkness. The fact that he emerged from such a contentious production experience with such fondness for the finished film speaks to his respect for director Mike Figgis's vision and his own pride in the performance he delivered. Gere was so pleased with their collaboration that he reunited with Figgis 3 years later for the psychological drama Mr. Jones in 1993. Fact 4. Original swimming pool ending cut test. Audiences in 1990 witnessed a version of Internal Affairs that featured a dramatically different finale, one that director Mike Figgis ultimately discarded after viewers responded negatively. The original ending took the film's climactic confrontation in a much darker and more visceral direction than what eventually appeared in theaters. In this alternate conclusion, after Dennis Peck shoots Amy Wallace and flees, Raymond Davila rushes home to protect his wife Kathleen, calling ahead to warn her to lock the doors. However, Peck arrives first and manages to break into the house, where he terrorizes Kathleen in an extended sequence that emphasized his sadistic nature. In a particularly disturbing scene, Peck forces Kathleen to remove his shoe and clean his wounded foot while speaking to her in what was described as a very perverse and sexual manner. When Raymond finally arrives home, Peck is holding Kathleen hostage with her mouth covered to prevent her from warning her husband. Peck then shoots Raymond, but the wounded investigator summons enough strength to rush at Peck, and both men crash through a window into the swimming pool. What follows is a brutal underwater fight where Peck attempts to drown Raymond, but Raymond manages to retrieve his gun and shoot Peck underwater, killing him. The scene continued with Raymond nearly drowning himself before Kathleen jumps in to save him. After desperate attempts to revive him, Raymond awakens, vomits, and at that moment, Peck's dead body bobs to the surface next to them. In a darkly comedic beat, Kathleen starts laughing before the couple embraces as sirens approach. According to Figgis's own account in his book Liebestraum, test audiences hated this ending, finding it too over-the-top and tonally jarring, prompting him to write and film the more restrained finale that appears in the theatrical version. Fact 5. Elijah Wood's early film appearance. Years before Elijah Wood would become internationally famous as Frodo Baggins in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, the young actor made an early career appearance in Internal Affairs at just 9 years old. Wood played Sean Stretch, the son of William Baldwin's character Van Stretch, appearing in several scenes that showed the domestic turmoil in the Stretch household. This was only Wood's second feature film role, coming shortly after his debut in Back to the Future Part 2 in 1989, and it helped establish him as one of Hollywood's most promising child actors. What makes Wood's participation in Internal Affairs particularly noteworthy is the film's dark and mature subject matter. The movie is rated R for graphic violence, strong sexual content, and pervasive profanity, dealing with themes of police corruption, adultery, manipulation, and murder in unflinching detail. Wood's character witnesses his father's cocaine, addiction, and violent behavior, including scenes where Van Stretch physically abuses his mother. According to interviews, Wood himself didn't actually watch Internal Affairs until he reached adulthood, as the content was deemed too mature for the young actor who had participated in making it. This was a common practice for child actors working in adult-oriented films during that era. The role in Internal Affairs was part of an impressive string of early performances that would establish Wood's reputation in Hollywood. Later in 1990, he would also appear in Barry Levinson's critically acclaimed drama Avalon, which earned 4 Academy Award nominations. His work in these films, along with subsequent roles in Paradise and Radio Flyer, demonstrated a maturity and depth unusual for such a young performer, eventually leading to his casting as Frodo. Fact 6. Director composed the haunting score Mike Figgis brought an unusual dual role to Internal Affairs, serving not only as the film's director, but also as one of its composers. This multifaceted contribution reflects Figgis's deep roots in music, as he had been a jazz musician and composer before transitioning into filmmaking. For Internal Affairs, Figgis collaborated with composers Anthony Marinelli and Brian Banks to create the film's atmospheric and haunting soundtrack. But he didn't just provide creative direction from behind the camera. Figgis personally performed on the recordings, playing piano and celeste to help craft the score's distinctive sound. The soundtrack itself is notable for its experimental approach, blending synthesizers, guitar, vocals, percussion, piano, and celeste in ways that were unconventional for a 1990s crime thriller. The music features a Latin-tinged sensibility that complements the Los Angeles setting and the psychological intensity of the cat-and-mouse game between Gere's and Garcia's characters. Additional musicians contributed to the unique soundscape, including flamenco guitarist Jorge Struns, percussionist Luis Conte, and soprano Darlene Koldenhoven, creating layers of texture that enhanced the film's neo-noir atmosphere. The score was recorded at Sonar Studio in Hollywood, California in December of 1989, just weeks before the film's January release. Figgis would continue to compose music for his own films throughout his career, most notably for his 1995 masterpiece, Leaving Las Vegas, which earned him Academy Award nominations for both directing and screenwriting. His background in music consistently informed his approach to filmmaking, as he understood how sound and image work together to create emotional resonance. The Internal Affairs score perfectly captures the film's themes of corruption, obsession, and psychological manipulation. Fact 7. Amy Wallace was written for a man, one of Internal Affairs' most progressive elements, emerged from a last-minute casting decision that transformed the entire dynamic of the film. The character of Amy Wallace, played by Laurie Metcalf, was originally written as a male role in screenwriter Henry Bean's script. However, when Metcalf met with director Mike Figgis during the casting process, he made the bold decision to change the character's gender and sexuality, casting Metcalf as Raymond Avila's female partner who happens to be a lesbian. This seemingly simple change had profound implications for the film's narrative and representation. By making Amy Wallace a woman and a lesbian, Figgis avoided what would have been a conventional male buddy cop dynamic and instead created something far more interesting and unique. In a 1990 Hollywood landscape where LGBTQ characters were rarely portrayed with dignity and depth, Amy Wallace stood out as remarkably sympathetic and fully realized. She's presented as a competent professional investigator whose sexuality is acknowledged naturally without becoming either her defining characteristic or the subject of prejudice within the story. Metcalf herself has spoken about this role in subsequent interviews, noting that the gender and sexuality change transformed what would have been a throwaway part into something crucial and unique. The role allowed her to portray a character who was complex, tough, and vulnerable in equal measures, without relying on stereotypes. Film critics and LGBTQ historians have praised Amy Wallace as one of the more respectful and authentic lesbian characters to appear in mainstream cinema during that era. Metcalf's performance brings warmth and humanity to the role, creating a character who feels like a real person rather than a token representation, which was revolutionary for 1990. Fact 8. Richard Gere's career resurrection. 1990 proved to be a pivotal year for Richard Gere's career, with Internal Affairs serving as one half of a remarkable dual comeback. By the mid-1980s, Gere's star power had significantly waned following a series of commercial disappointments. His 1985 biblical epic King David had been a critical and financial disaster, and subsequent projects failed to recapture the success he'd enjoyed earlier in the decade, with films like American Gigolo and An Officer and a Gentleman. Industry observers had begun to wonder if Gere's time as a leading man had passed. Then came 1990, when two wildly different films released within weeks of each other completely revitalized his career. Internal Affairs opened on January 12, 1990, showcasing Gere in a role unlike anything he'd done before, a charismatic but utterly corrupt police officer who represented pure evil beneath a charming exterior. Critics praised his performance, with many noting that playing a villain revealed depths of his talent that romantic-led roles had never tapped. Just over 2 months later, on March 23, 1990, Pretty Woman opened and became a cultural phenomenon, earning over $463 million worldwide and reminding audiences why they had fallen in love with Gere in the first place. The romantic chemistry between Gere and Julia Roberts captivated viewers and made the film one of the highest-grossing romantic comedies of all time. These two films, released in quick succession, demonstrated Gere's remarkable range as an actor. He could be both the Prince Charming of Pretty Woman and the manipulative sociopath of Internal Affairs with equal conviction. The double success made Gere bankable again, leading to a string of successful films throughout the 1990s and cementing his status as one of Hollywood's most versatile leading men. Fact 9. Erie Brooklyn's finest connection. Sometimes life imitates art in the strangest ways, and Internal Affairs contains a line of dialogue that would prove eerily prophetic nearly 2 decades later. In the film, Richard Gere's character Dennis Peck delivers a cynical monologue to his partner Van Stretch about the darker realities of police work, asking rhetorically, "How many cops you know are divorced? Got nothing, sitting alone in the dark playing lollipop with a service revolver." The phrase "playing lollipop with a service revolver" is a disturbing euphemism for contemplating suicide by putting a gun in one's mouth. It's a throwaway line meant to characterize Peck's casual brutality and his understanding of how the job destroys officers' lives. Fast forward 19 years to 2009, when Richard Gere returned to playing a cop in Antoine Fuqua's gritty police drama, Brooklyn's Finest. In that film's opening scene, Gere portrays Eddie Dugan, a burned-out New York Police Department officer who is doing exactly what Dennis Peck described all those years earlier. The film opens with Eddie sitting alone in his dark, sparsely furnished apartment, and in a moment of despair, he places his service revolver in his mouth, seriously contemplating ending his life. The parallel between these two films is striking and unintentional. Brooklyn's Finest screenwriter Michael C. Martin and director Antoine Fuqua weren't deliberately referencing Internal Affairs. Yet here was Gere, nearly 2 decades later, embodying the very image that his villainous character had once described with such callous indifference. The coincidence adds a haunting layer to both films, suggesting that certain themes about police work, corruption, and psychological damage remain constant across generations of law enforcement stories. Fact 10. The disappearing Corvette hardtop. Even the most meticulously planned films occasionally suffer from continuity errors, and Internal Affairs features a particularly noticeable one involving Dennis Peck's prized 1963 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray. In an early sequence where Raymond Avila is following Peck, viewers can clearly see that Peck is driving his red Corvette convertible with the hardtop firmly attached. However, after several miles of driving through Los Angeles streets with Avila tailing him, the hardtop has mysteriously vanished, and Peck is suddenly cruising in an open convertible. This mistake might seem minor to casual viewers, but anyone familiar with Corvettes would immediately recognize the impossibility of what's shown on screen. Corvette hardtops, particularly on 1963 models, do not fold down or retract like a convertible soft top. They are solid one-piece fiberglass structures that must be physically removed and stored elsewhere when not in use. Furthermore, there is absolutely no room to carry or store a hardtop anywhere on a Corvette when it's been removed. The trunk space is minimal, and the design simply doesn't accommodate transporting the hardtop along with the vehicle. The only way the hardtop can be transported is by being installed on the car itself. This means that for the hardtop to disappear, as shown in the film, Peck would have needed to stop his car, completely remove the heavy fiberglass top, and somehow dispose of it or leave it behind, all while being actively followed by an internal affairs investigator. The error likely resulted from the production using two different Corvettes for different shots, or from reshooting scenes at different times with different configurations of the vehicle. And the continuity department simply missed the discrepancy during editing. Fact 11. Two identical Corvettes used the stunning 1963 Chevrolet Corvette. Stingray that Dennis Peck drives throughout Internal Affairs wasn't just one car. The production actually used two nearly identical vehicles to accommodate the demanding shooting schedule. Movie productions commonly use multiple versions of important vehicles to ensure they always have a working car available and to facilitate different camera angles and stunt work without risking damage to a single vehicle. For Internal Affairs, the production team secured two matching Corvette Stingrays, both painted in the distinctive 923, a Riverside red color, that made such a striking visual statement on screen. However, there was one key difference between the two cars that sharp-eyed viewers might notice upon careful examination. Car number 1 featured a red interior, while car number 2 was equipped with a tan interior. This distinction was likely chosen to provide the production with flexibility. The tan interior photographs better under certain lighting conditions and creates less visual distraction during interior shots of characters in the vehicle. The Riverside red exterior with tan interior combination is actually a classic and highly desirable color scheme for 1963 Corvettes, embodying the elegant yet aggressive aesthetic that defined the C2 Corvette generation. These Corvettes appear extensively throughout the film as Peck's primary mode of transportation when off-duty, serving as a visual symbol of his corruption. There's simply no way a regular patrol officer's salary could support the alimony for 3 ex-wives, 8 children, and a classic Corvette Stingray. Decades after filming concluded, at least one of these cars has resurfaced in the collector car market, with one owner discovering they had purchased the actual car number 2 from the production. Fact 12. Director's cameo as restaurant manager. Mike Figgis joined a long Hollywood tradition of directors making brief cameo appearances in their own films when he stepped in front of the camera for a small but memorable role in Internal Affairs. Figgis appears as the manager of an upscale restaurant during one of the film's most emotionally charged scenes. In this sequence, Raymond Avila's obsession with the Dennis Peck case has pushed his marriage to a breaking point, and the psychological warfare that Peck has been waging, including planting the false suggestion that he's having an affair with Raymond's wife, Kathleen, has driven Raymond to paranoia and rage. When Kathleen tries to host a social event, Raymond confronts her publicly about his suspicions in an increasingly volatile argument. As the confrontation escalates and other patrons begin to notice the domestic dispute unfolding, Figgis's character, the restaurant manager, attempts to intervene and calm the situation. He approaches the arguing couple with professional concern, trying to diplomatically diffuse the tension and protect the comfort of his other customers. The scene serves as a powerful demonstration of how completely Peck has gotten inside Raymond's head, turning the dedicated investigator into the kind of person who causes public scenes and loses control of his emotions. Figgis's brief appearance adds another layer to the scene, the director himself bearing witness to the destructive power of the psychological manipulation at the heart of his film's narrative. Director cameos serve various purposes, from playful Easter eggs for audiences to practical solutions when an extra is needed for a specific scene. In Figgis's case, the cameo allows him to inhabit his own creation for a moment, experiencing firsthand the world of corruption and obsession he'd crafted. Fact 13. Modest box office. Strong video sales. Internal Affairs had a complicated commercial life that illustrates how a film's initial theatrical performance doesn't always tell the complete story of its success. When the movie opened in January of 1990, it faced the typical challenge of a mid-budget thriller released during a traditionally slow period for moviegoing. The film earned approximately $27.7 million at the domestic box office against its $15 million production budget. While this represented a profit and meant the film wasn't a financial failure, it wasn't the breakout hit that Paramount Pictures might have hoped for given the star power of Richard Gere. Critical reception was much more enthusiastic than the box office. Numbers might suggest, with reviewers praising the performances, Mike Figgis's direction, and the film's psychological intensity. However, Internal Affairs found its true audience not in theaters but in the burgeoning home video market of the early 1990s. When the film was released on VHS and later DVD, it became a strong seller and frequent rental, with viewers discovering or rediscovering the taut thriller in their living rooms. The home video success was significant enough that industry publications noted it as an example of how certain films connect more strongly with audiences in the home viewing environment, where the psychological intensity and adult themes could be appreciated without the pressures of a theatrical movie-going experience. This strong afterlife on video helped establish Internal Affairs as a cult classic of early 1990s neo-noir cinema. The film's reputation has only grown over the decades, with new generations discovering it through streaming services and special edition releases, cementing its status as an underseen gem that deserves wider recognition. Fact 14. Included in NYT's Best 1000 Movies. Despite its modest theatrical performance, Internal Affairs received significant critical validation when it was selected for inclusion in the New York Times Guide to the Best 1000 Movies Ever Made. This prestigious collection, based on reviews published in the New York Times between 1929 and 1998, represents the newspaper's critical establishment's picks for the essential films that define cinema history. Being chosen for this list placed Internal Affairs in rare company, elevated alongside acknowledged masterpieces and canonical classics. The film's inclusion was based largely on the strength of Janet Maslin's original review, which appeared when the film opened in January of 1990. Maslin, who served as one of the New York Times chief film critics from 1977 to 1999, was known for her perceptive analysis and influential opinions. In her review, Maslin called Internal Affairs an unusually bright light for the traditionally dim movie season of January, when studios typically dump their less commercial or more challenging films. Her phrase captured the surprise many critics felt at discovering such a taut, well-crafted thriller arriving during a month usually dominated by awards season holdovers and forgettable genre exercises. Maslin particularly praised Richard Gere's performance as Dennis Peck, noting how playing against type as a villain showcased his range as an actor. The inclusion in this guide represents a form of canonization for Internal Affairs, ensuring that the film would be remembered and recommended to serious film enthusiasts long after its theatrical run ended. It validated the instincts of everyone involved in making the film, confirming that they had created something of lasting artistic value despite the lukewarm initial box office reception. Fact 15. Score didn't receive official release until 2021. One of the most puzzling aspects of Internal Affairs' legacy is the long delay before its atmospheric musical score received an official commercial release. When the film premiered in January of 1990, the haunting soundtrack composed by director Mike Figgis, along with Anthony Marinelli and Brian Banks, was widely praised by critics and audiences alike. The score's blend of synthesizers, percussion, flamenco guitar, and piano created a distinctive sonic landscape that perfectly complemented the film's psychological intensity and Los Angeles noir atmosphere. Despite this acclaim, and despite the general practice of releasing film soundtracks commercially, the Internal Affairs score never received an official soundtrack album release in 1990 or in the years immediately following. This left fans of the film's music unable to purchase or own the compositions they'd heard in the theater. Decades passed with the score remaining unavailable, existing only as part of the film itself, becoming something of a holy grail for soundtrack collectors who appreciated its experimental and evocative qualities. Finally, 31 years after the film's release, La La Land Records announced a world premiere CD release of the complete score in 2021. The label, known for releasing limited edition soundtracks of rare and previously unavailable film scores, produced only 1,000 copies of the album, making it an instant collector's item. The release included extensive liner notes by writer Daniel Schweiger, featuring new interview material with all three composers, Figgis, Marinelli, and Banks, as well as comments from actors Richard Gere and Andy Garcia about working on the film. The long-delayed release gave fans finally a chance to own and appreciate the score on its own terms, separate from the film's visuals.